When my wife from London brought home a man from Boston, I realized he's my father. My name is James Morrison. I'm 32 years old, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I knew everything about my family. Now I'm not sure I know anything at all.It. Started on a Thursday evening in April. I was coming home from work. I'm a software engineer at a tech company in Shoreditch when I saw my wife Emma's car parked outside our flat in Islington. That wasn't unusual. She worked from home as a freelance graphic designer, so she was usually there when I got back, but there was another car parked behind hers. An expensive-looking American sedan with Massachusetts plates that I walked up to our third-floor flat and could hear voices inside. Emma's and a man's voice I'd never heard before. American accent, deep, confident. I could feel my stomach clench with something I didn't want to examine too closely. Emma opened the door with a bright smile that faded slightly when she saw my face. "James, you're home early. I want you to meet someone." Behind her stood a man in his 50s, tall, with silver hair and kind eyes. He was well-dressed in a way that screamed money. Expensive suit, quality watch, confident posture. He extended his hand. "James Morrison, I presume? I'm Richard Thompson. It's a pleasure to meet you." I shook his hand, but my mind was racing. Richard Thompson. The name meant nothing to me, but there was something familiar about his face, something that made my skin crawl with unease. "Nice to meet you too," I said, forcing a smile. "Emma didn't mention you were coming." "Oh, it was quite spontaneous," Richard said easily. "I'm in London on business, and Emma was kind enough to offer me a place to stay for a few days." Emma appeared at my elbow, her hand on my arm. "Richard's a friend from university. We studied together at the London School of Economics years ago. He's in finance now, works for some big firm in Boston." I nodded, but I was studying Richard's face more carefully now. There was something about the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the shape of his jaw, the way he held his head. It was driving me crazy. "Would you like some tea?" Emma asked, clearly trying to smooth over whatever tension she sensed in the room. "Actually, I think I'll go for a walk," I said. "Clear my head a bit." Emma looked surprised. "But you just got home." "I know, but I've been sitting at a desk all day. I need some air." I grabbed my jacket and left before either of them could protest. As I walked down the stairs, I could hear Emma's voice rising in what sounded like an argument, but I couldn't make out the words that I walked for hours through the streets of North London, my mind churning. There was something wrong here, something deeply wrong. Richard Thompson might have been a friend of Emma's from university, but he was also something else. Something connected to me in a way I couldn't articulate when I finally returned home. Around 10 p.m., the lights were off except for a dim lamp in the living room. Emma was asleep on the couch, and Richard's bedroom door was closed. I crept into our bedroom and lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling. The next morning, Emma made breakfast like nothing unusual had happened. Richard joined us, charming and polite, asking about my work, commenting on the weather, discussing football like we were old mates. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something crucial. "Richard, what do you do in Boston exactly?" I asked as we sat around the breakfast table. "I'm in investment banking," he replied, buttering his toast with practiced efficiency. "Mergers and acquisitions, mostly. It's not glamorous, but it pays. The bills." "Must be nice," I said. "I've always wondered what America's like. Never been myself." Richard's eyes twinkled. "Oh, you should visit sometime. Boston's a beautiful city. Rich history, great universities, wonderful people. Maybe someday," I said, but I was still studying his face. There was something about the way he moved, the confidence in his gestures, that reminded me of someone. But who? After breakfast, Richard announced that he was going to do some work calls and disappeared into the guest room with his laptop. Emma started clearing dishes, and I caught her arm. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" She looked nervous. "Of course, what's wrong? Why didn't you tell me Richard was coming?" Her face flushed. "I didn't think it was a big deal. He's just an old friend, James. We haven't seen each other in years. An old friend who you suddenly decide to put up for a week. We have history, okay? University days, shared experiences. It's not like that, if that's what you're thinking." But I was thinking exactly that. There was something between them, something that went beyond casual friendship. And there was still that nagging feeling about Richard's face. "Emma, how well did you really know this guy in university?" Her expression shifted, became defensive. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. He seems very familiar to me." Like I've seen him somewhere before. She laughed, but it sounded forced. You probably saw him around campus. He was quite popular, you know. Lots of people knew Richard. That afternoon, I decided to do some digging. I went to my old room in our flat, the one we'd converted into an office, and started searching online for information about Richard Thompson, investment banker from Boston, attended LSE in the early 90s. The results were sparse, but interesting. Richard Thompson, indeed a successful investment banker, had been featured in several business magazines. Photos showed the same confident man who was currently staying in my guest room. But as I scrolled through image results, I found something that made my blood run cold. A wedding photo from 1995. Richard Thompson marrying a woman named Margaret Morrison. Margaret Morrison. My mother's name was Margaret Morrison. I clicked on the article. Local man Richard Thompson marries longtime girlfriend Margaret Morrison in Boston ceremony. My hands were shaking as I read. Margaret Morrison, 28, of Boston, met her husband while studying at the London School of Economics. The photo showed a young Richard, looking exactly like the man staying in my guest room, with his arm around a woman who looked remarkably like my mother. But that was impossible. My mother had been married to my father, David Morrison, a history professor at Cambridge. They'd been married for 35 years. My father was still alive. He lived in a retirement community in Suffolk, unless I pulled out my phone and called my mother. She answered on the second ring. James, how lovely to hear from you. How are things with Emma? Fine, Mom. I have a question for you. Did you ever know someone named Richard Thompson? There was a long pause. Richard Thompson? Why do you ask? He's staying at our flat right now. He says he knew you at university. Another pause, longer this time. James, love, I think you might be mistaken. I don't believe I ever met anyone named Richard Thompson. But the wedding photo, Mom. 1995, you married a Richard Thompson in Boston. James, what are you talking about? I've been married to your father for 35 years. I've never been to Boston, and I've certainly never married anyone named Richard Thompson. I felt like the ground was shifting beneath my feet. But there's a photo, Mom. Proof. James, I think you need to talk to someone. This sounds like some kind of delusion. I hung up the phone and stared at the screen. The photo was still there, clear as day. Margaret Morrison marrying Richard Thompson. Unless Margaret Morrison wasn't my mother. Asterisk, the realization hit me like a physical blow. I had a birth certificate listing David and Margaret Morrison as my parents. I had childhood photos, school records, everything that proved I was their son. But what if someone had lied? What if I'd been given false documents? What if the man staying in my guest room was actually my biological father? I needed proof. I needed to know the truth. That evening, when Emma came home from her design work, I was waiting for her in the living room. We need to talk, I said as she walked in the door. She looked at me warily. What's wrong? Who am I, Emma? Really? I don't understand what you mean. The man staying in our guest room. Richard Thompson. I think he might be my father. Emma's face went pale. James, that's ridiculous. Why would you even think that? Because there's a wedding photo from 1995 of him marrying a woman named Margaret Morrison. My mother's name is Margaret Morrison. That's just a coincidence, is it? Because I called Mom, and she swears she's never met anyone named Richard Thompson. But there's photographic proof of their wedding. Emma sank into a chair, her hands trembling. Oh God, James. I was hoping you'd never find out. Find out what? She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. Richard isn't just an old university friend, James. He's your father. And I'm your mother. The words hung in the air between us like a physical presence. Emma was crying now, great heaving sobs that shook her entire body. I just sat there, staring at her, trying to process what she'd said. You're my mother, I repeated slowly. But that's impossible. You're 35 years old. You went to university with Richard. You're my wife. I know how it sounds, she said through her tears. But it's true, James. Richard and I, we had an affair when we were students. I got pregnant. His family was wealthy, influential. They made it very clear that a scandal would ruin everything. She wiped her eyes and continued. Richard wanted to marry me, but his parents arranged a marriage with Margaret Morrison, a respectable American girl from Boston. They paid me off, a lot of money, and I disappeared. I went to live with my aunt in Scotland, had the baby, gave it up for adoption. I felt like I was going to be sick. You gave me up for adoption? I didn't have a choice. I was 21, scared, alone. They told me if I caused a scandal, they'd ruin my family too. And I loved Richard, I still do. I thought I was protecting him, protecting us both. But I grew up thinking Margaret and David Morrison were my parents. Margaret is Richard's wife. David must be the man who adopted you. They probably couldn't have children of their own, so they took you in. I've been watching you my whole adult life, James, making sure you were happy, healthy, safe. I stood up and started pacing. This is insane. This is completely insane. You're my mother, but you're also my wife. Richard is my father, but he's also been married to another woman for 25 years. I know it's complicated, Emma said, but I never meant for any of this to happen. I never meant to fall in love with you. It just happened. When? What? When did you fall in love with me? When you were pretending to be my wife. I wasn't pretending. I love you, James. I've always loved you. From the moment I first saw you at that gallery opening 3 years ago, I knew you were my son. But I also knew I was falling in love with you, and I couldn't stop it. I laughed bitterly. So you seduced your own son? I didn't know. Not at first. I thought, I hoped, that maybe we weren't really related, that it was just some incredible coincidence. But then I found your birth certificate, and I saw the names. Margaret and David Morrison. Richard's Margaret. And you married me anyway? I couldn't help myself. I told myself that legally, we weren't related, that you were adopted, that there was no blood connection. I told myself that love was love, that what we had was real. What about Richard? Does he know? Her face crumpled. He found out about you a year ago. He hired a private investigator to find his son. When he realized it was you, he wanted to meet you. I told him I'd arrange it, that I'd bring you together slowly. So bringing him here, putting him in our guest room, that was all part of some grand plan. I thought if you met him, if you got to know him, you might understand, that you might forgive us both. I laughed again, the sound harsh in the quiet flat. Forgive you? For what? For lying to me for 3 years? For marrying your own son? For destroying my entire understanding of who I am? I never meant to hurt you, she whispered. The guest room door opened, and Richard stepped into the living room. He looked tired, older than he had that morning. Emma, I think it's time we told him everything, he said quietly. That I turned to face him, and for the first time, I really saw him. Not as the stranger who'd invaded my home, but as the man who might have given me half my DNA. You knew, I said to him. You knew the whole time. Asterisk, I found out about you a year ago, he confirmed. I hired investigators, tracked down your adoption records. When I saw your photo, I knew immediately. You look exactly like I did at your age. Why didn't you come forward before? Because I was a coward, he said simply. I was married to Margaret, had built a life, a career. I was afraid of losing everything. But then I started having health problems, heart issues, nothing serious, but enough to make me think about legacy. I realized I was going to die having never known my own son. He looked at Emma. When Emma told me she'd met you, that she was in love with you, I thought it was fate. That somehow, the universe was giving me a second chance. A second chance. To what? Ruin another life. To be a father, Richard said. To know my son, even if I couldn't have him the way I wanted. I felt like my world was ending. Everything I thought I knew about myself, about my family, about love and marriage and identity, it was all a lie. Where is the real Emma? I asked. My wife. She's in Scotland, Emma said. She's been there for 3 weeks. I told her I needed to visit my sick mother. So you've been living my life for 3 years. I've been living our life, she said. Desperately. James, I love you. I know it's wrong. I know it's impossible, but I can't stop loving you. Richard stepped forward. James, I know this is a lot to process, but there's something else you should know. The Margaret Morrison who married me, she's not your mother either. I stared at him. What do you mean? Margaret died in a car accident 6 months after our wedding. The woman you know as your mother, she's an imposter. Someone who took Margaret's identity after the accident. I felt like I was going to faint. What? Margaret was supposed to have a baby, our baby, but she died before the child was born. The woman who raised you found Margaret's documents, assumed her identity, raised you as her own son. So I'm not even who I thought I was. You're James Morrison, Richard said. My son, Emma's son. The rest is just paperwork. Emma stood up and moved toward me. James, please. I know this is terrible, but we can work through it. We can figure out a way to make this right. I backed away from her. Don't touch me. Don't you dare touch me. I love you, she said. I've always loved you. You're my mother, and you're my son, and my husband, and the love of my life. I know it's impossible, but that doesn't change how I feel. Richard put his hand on Emma's shoulder. Emma, maybe you should go. Let me talk to him alone. No, she said fiercely. I won't leave him. I won't lose him again. I looked at both of them, my parents, my wife, the two people who'd created this impossible situation, and realized that my life as I knew it was over, but the worst part was yet to come. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, our bed, listening to Emma breathing softly beside me, and felt like I was trapped in a nightmare that refused to end. Richard was in the guest room, probably not sleeping either. At 3 a.m., I got up and went to the kitchen to make tea. Richard was already there, sitting at the table with 2 cups of coffee. Couldn't sleep either, he asked. I don't think I'll be sleeping for a while, I replied. Sitting down across from him, he pushed a cup of coffee toward me. Emma told me about the real Emma, your wife. I'm sorry. Sorry. That's all you can say? My entire life has been a lie. And you're sorry. I know it's not enough. But I want to help fix this. Fix it. How do you fix something like this? How do you unmarry your mother? How do you unknow that your parents aren't your parents? Richard was quiet for a long moment. I've been thinking about that. About who you really are, who we all really are. Oh, this should be good. You're James Morrison. That's who you are. The details, the names, the documents, the false families, they're just paperwork. DNA doesn't lie. DNA lies all the time. Look at us. He flinched at that. I know this is difficult, but there's something else you should know. Something Emma doesn't know. I looked up sharply. What do you mean? Emma isn't your biological mother. I nearly dropped my coffee cup. What? Emma, your wife, the woman who's been living as you. She's not the woman who gave birth to you. She's actually the daughter of the real Emma. I felt like my head was going to explode. What are you talking about? Your biological mother. The woman who had an affair with me at university, she was named Sarah. Sarah Williams. She gave birth to you, then gave you up for adoption. The Emma you married 3 years ago is actually Sarah's daughter, your half-sister. I stood up so quickly my chair fell over. That's impossible. That's completely insane. Check the adoption records. Check the birth certificates. Emma's real name is Elizabeth Williams. She's 32 years old, 5 years younger than the Emma who raised her. I grabbed my laptop and started searching frantically. Birth records, adoption, files, anything I could find. And there it was, buried in the adoption agency's database, a file marked Closed Adoption, James Morrison. Birth mother, Sarah Williams, born 1972. Father, Richard Thompson, listed as unknown. Child, James Morrison, born 1991, but there was more. A second file, adoption records for Elizabeth Williams, born 1991, to Sarah Williams and unknown father, twins. I had a twin sister I'd never known about. Elizabeth, I whispered. Emma's real name is Elizabeth. Sarah had twins, Richard said quietly. She couldn't afford to raise either of you. She gave you both up for adoption to different families. But Emma said she was the one who had me. Elizabeth found out about you when she was 25. She hired a private investigator to find her birth mother. Sarah told her the truth about me, about you, about everything. Elizabeth became obsessed with finding you. How? She tracked down the family that adopted you, David and Margaret Morrison. She started watching you, learning about your life. When she realized you were gay, she panicked. She couldn't bear the thought of losing you without ever knowing you. So she pretended to be someone else. She assumed the identity of Emma Richardson, a woman who died in a car accident. The year before, she'd been following your life for months, knew everything about you, about your work, your friends, your routines. I felt sick. And the real Emma? The real Emma Richardson is in a psychiatric facility in Scotland. Elizabeth's been visiting her, keeping her medicated, making sure she doesn't cause any trouble. This is insane. This is completely insane. Elizabeth fell in love with you, Richard continued. Not as a brother, but as a man. When she realized she couldn't have you as family, she decided to have you as husband. And you knew about this, too. I found out recently. Elizabeth came to me a month ago, told me everything. She said she was going to tell you the truth, that she loved you too much to live a lie. Did she tell you about the real Emma? Richard hesitated. She said Emma Richardson had a heart attack last week. She didn't survive. I sank back into my chair. You're telling me my wife is dead, and I've been married to my twin sister for 3 years. Not just your twin sister. Your wife. The mother of your children. I felt like the world was spinning. Children. Elizabeth's pregnant. 3 months. I put my head in my hands. This can't be real. This has to be a nightmare. It's real, James. And it's about to get worse. Worse? How could it possibly get worse? Richard pulled out his phone and showed me a text message. The real Margaret Morrison, my first wife, she's not dead. I looked at the message. It was from a number I didn't recognize. Richard, it's time we talked about James. I know about Elizabeth. I know about everything. Margaret's alive. I whispered. She's been alive for 25 years. Living in Boston, raising our daughter. I felt like I was going to faint. You have another daughter? A daughter you've never met. Her name is Rebecca. She's 27 years old, works as a lawyer in Boston. And she's been looking for you too. Richard's phone buzzed again. Another text. Rebecca wants to meet her brother. Are you ready for that? I looked up at him. How many children do you have that I don't know about? Just you and Rebecca. But there might be others. I wasn't exactly celibate during my marriage to Margaret. I stood up and started pacing. So let me get this straight. I'm married to my twin sister, who's pregnant with my child. My biological father is the man who's been staying in my guest room. My biological mother is dead. The woman who raised me stole another woman's identity. And I have a half-sister in Boston who's a lawyer. That's about right. And the woman I thought was my wife is actually my twin sister, who's been pretending to be someone else for 3 years. Yes. I laughed bitterly. This is like a soap opera written by someone on drugs. I know it's a lot to process. Lot to process. Richard, I've been committing incest with my twin sister for 3 years. I've been living a lie built on lies built on more lies. I know, and I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't even begin to cover this. The bedroom door opened, and Elizabeth, Emma, stepped into the kitchen. She looked terrible, pale and drawn, her eyes red from crying. James, I can explain. Don't, I said, holding up my hand. Just don't. I love you. I've always loved you. Even when I found out the truth, I couldn't stop loving you. You're my sister. I'm your wife. I'm the mother of your child. I'm the only family you've ever really known. Richard stood up. Elizabeth, maybe you should know. I won't lose him again. I won't. She moved toward me, and I backed away. Stay away from me. Just stay away. I won't leave you. I can't. Then I'll leave. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. James, wait. Elizabeth called after me. Where will you go? I paused at the door, my hand on the handle. Anywhere that's not here. Anywhere that doesn't smell like lies and incest and betrayal. And then I walked out into the London night, leaving behind the most impossible family situation in history. But I had no idea that the worst was yet to come. I spent the next 3 days crashing on my best friend's couch, trying to process what had happened. Marcus was a good friend, but even he was struggling with the situation. Dude, this is like a movie that got way too weird, he said as we sat in his kitchen drinking coffee. How do you even begin to unpack something like this? I don't know, I replied. I just know I can't go back there. I can't look at Elizabeth, Emma, and see my wife when I know she's my sister. Have you talked to anyone? Like professionals? I shook my head. I don't even know where to start. What do you call this? A family crisis? A legal nightmare? A psychological breakdown? Probably all three. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. James, it's Rebecca. Dad gave me your number. We need to talk. I stared at the message for a long time. Rebecca, my half-sister from Boston. Another person I'd never met. Another piece of the puzzle that was my impossible family that I texted back. Who is this? Rebecca Thompson. Your half-sister. I know. About Elizabeth. I know about everything. Can we talk? I called her. James. Her voice was warm, American, familiar in a way that made my chest tight. Yeah. Hi. I know this is crazy. I've been trying to find you for years. When Dad told me about Elizabeth, about what she'd done, I had to call. Elizabeth's pregnant. I know. She told me. She said she couldn't help herself, that she loved you too much to let you go. I laughed bitterly. Love. Right. James, I know this is impossible, but she's still your wife. She's still the mother of your child. And she's still family. She's my sister. She's also the woman who's been by your side for 3 years, who supported you, who loved you, who built a life with you. She lied to me. She protected you. She thought she was protecting all of us. I was quiet for a moment. How did you find out about me? Dad hired a private investigator when he got sick. He wanted to know if he had children. The investigator found you, and Elizabeth, and, well, everything else. And Margaret, your mother, is very much alive. She's been living in Boston all these years. She left Dad when she found out about his affair with Sarah. She couldn't handle the scandal, so she disappeared and assumed a new identity. So everyone's been lying to everyone. Pretty much. But James, there's something else you should know. Something about Sarah, your birth mother. What about her? She's not dead. She's been looking for you too. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. What? Sarah Williams is alive. She's been living in Wales, working as a librarian. She found out about Elizabeth's deception and has been trying to contact you through lawyers. I sank into Marcus's couch. This is insane. My birth mother is alive. My adoptive mother stole someone else's identity. My wife is actually my twin sister. My father is the man who stayed in my guest room. And I have a half-sister in Boston. And now you know about all of us. I spent the next hour talking to Rebecca, learning about my other family. She was a lawyer, 27 years old, had been married for 2 years. She had 2 kids, a boy and a girl. I always wondered about you, she said. Dad never talked about his affair, but I could tell he was haunted by it. When he got sick, he finally told me the truth. What kind of sick? His heart. Nothing life-threatening, but enough to make him think about legacy. He didn't want to die without knowing his son. And now he knows. And now he knows. James, he wants to meet you. All of us do. Asterisk, I was quiet for a long time. I don't know if I can handle meeting more family members. I can barely process the ones I already know about. I understand. But there's something else. Something that might change everything. What? Elizabeth's pregnancy test was negative. I sat up straight. What do you mean? She's been having morning sickness, weight gain, all the symptoms. But the test was negative. She went to see a doctor yesterday. And the doctor thinks she might be experiencing some kind of psychological pregnancy. A false pregnancy brought on by extreme stress and trauma. I felt dizzy. So she's not actually pregnant. No, but she believes she is. The stress of everything that's happened, the lies, the guilt, the fear of losing you, it's manifesting physically. I put my head in my hands. This is too much. This is just too much. James, there's one more thing. The real Emma Richardson, your wife, she's not dead. I looked up. What? Elizabeth told everyone she had a heart attack, but she's actually in a psychiatric facility in Scotland. Very much alive. Why didn't she tell me? Because she was afraid you'd leave her. She was afraid of losing you. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. She already lost me. She lost me the moment she lied to me. That evening, Rebecca called again. James, Margaret wants to talk to you. Your mother? Our mother. The real one. I took a deep breath and said, okay. Margaret Thompson's voice was soft, accented, older than I'd expected. James, this is Margaret. Your mother. Hi. I said, not knowing what else to say. I know this is difficult. I know I have no right to call you my son after abandoning you for 25 years. You didn't abandon me. You didn't even know I existed. I should have looked for you. I should have fought harder to keep my family together. But I was young and scared and stupid. Why did you leave? Because I found out about Sarah. About the baby. I couldn't handle the shame, the scandal. So I ran. I assumed a new identity, started over. It was cowardly, and I'm sorry. Did you ever think about me? About Dad? Every day? Every single day? But I was too ashamed to come back. Too afraid of what I'd find. And now I want to know you. All of you. I want to be a grandmother to Elizabeth's baby, assuming there actually is one. There isn't. There was a pause. What do you mean? I explained about the false pregnancy, about Elizabeth's psychological state, about the real Emma being alive. Oh God, Margaret whispered. What have we done? We've created a mess that no family therapist in the world could fix. James, I know. This is impossible, but maybe we can fix it. Maybe we can find a way to make this right. How? By being honest. By facing the truth together. By loving each other despite everything. I was quiet for a long time. Margaret, yes, sweetheart. Do you think it's possible to love someone too much? I think it's possible to love someone in the wrong way. But love itself? Love is never wrong. The next morning, I made a decision. I was going to face this mess head on. I was going to meet my family, all of them, and figure out what came next. That I called Elizabeth. James. Her voice was small, scared. We need to talk. All of us. Together. Are you coming home? I don't know if there is a home anymore. But I know there are people who love me, even if they showed it in the worst possible way. I'm sorry. James. I'm so sorry. I know you are. And I forgive you. But forgiveness and trust are two different things. That afternoon, we all met at a cafe in central London. Me, Elizabeth, Richard, Margaret, who had flown in from Boston, Rebecca, and even the real Emma Richardson, who'd been released from the psychiatric facility. It was the strangest family reunion in history. Elizabeth, my wife and sister, looked terrible, pale, thin, her belly obviously not pregnant. The real Emma sat quietly, occasionally glancing at me with a mixture of guilt and longing. Richard and Margaret held hands, both crying. Rebecca hugged me the moment I walked in. Welcome to the family, she said with a sad smile. As we sat around the table, sharing our impossible story with each other, I realized something. Family isn't about blood or marriage or legal documents. It's about the people who love you, even when they screw up in the most spectacular ways possible. That we were broken, dysfunctional, and completely messed up. But we were family, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough.